Welcome back to This is ADHD Season 2. I'm your host, Chris Johnson. Season 1 was a bit of a seat of the pants podcast. The first episode was done start to finish in about 2 weeks. And as much as I'd like to promise that I have learned my lessons, Season 2 is very much going to be more of the same, I'm afraid. A little bit about me. I'm Chris Johnson. I'm late diagnosed with ADHD. I am a senior leader and a personal change coach, working with people that want to change their lives for the better. In my coaching work, I work with people to understand what is getting in the way and how they can not only get the change that they want in their lives, but also to feel good whilst doing it. It's hard enough making changes. It's even worse when you feel bad about it. I typically work with people over a series of months, but in This is ADHD, I'm using my coaching skills to have a real conversation with a real ADHDer about what it's like to have ADHD. Because this podcast, This is ADHD, is about putting a face to the name, label, or diagnosis of ADHD and show that it can't be described in a single conversation with a single person. My ADHD is different to yours, and funnily enough, both of them are valid. In today's episode, Full Metal ADHD, I am going to be talking with my co-host, Reanne Copley. It's really raw and unfiltered, and it's about really radical self-acceptance and leaning into ADHD and being absolutely unapologetically yourself. Reanne only knows how to bring her true self to the conversation, and I am so proud of the talk that we did. I do want to warn you, though, it is an emotional conversation, and the language starts bad, and it only gets worse over the course of this episode. This is your only warning, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But it's such a good listen. I'm really happy about it. I hope you do too. So go grab a coffee, stick your headphones in, and well, let's get listening. Today I've joined by Reanne Copley. She is a healer, a mystic, a neurobehaviorist, a waitress, and a stand-up comic. When I asked her for an introduction, she's told me to call her a Sheldon Cooper with titties. Hi, Reanne. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing so great, and I'm so blessed to be on this podcast with you today. I'm really excited about connecting with you because the work that you're doing is so transformational, and I'm really excited to be able to have a banter with someone completely across the globe that gets me, and we get each other in a way that is expansive.
Yeah, and also you're the second person turning up for Team Canada as well.
Yeah, you said your other person was from Alberta as well. So, are we just bored over here?
I might have got that confused. I'm very big in Canada, very big in the UK. That's the only two countries.
That's okay. Those are two of the best countries.
There we go.
You don't really want to be big in the US because they're just going to start sending you pigs and Cheetos.
And that's all our US listeners gone.
They're like, fuck you. I thought Canadians were nice. Go ride your polar bear or some shit.
Oh, dear.
Not me being nice.
No social normities here.
None.
So, Reanne, how do you call your ADHD?
Yeah, so I am ADHD autistic. I didn't know that I was ADHD until about 2 years ago, and autism came in about a year a bit ago. I don't necessarily have a specific label for either of them. I'm very open about it. even at my waitressing job, as I'm talking to people, I'm like, how's your day going? Whatever.
Mm.
Can I grab you a coffee? Would you like a soda? And they're talking. I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually just like a fun job for me. I'm ADHD autistic, so I just kind of do whatever the fuck I want. I assume everybody else is going to be fine. So I just call it ADHD autism. Probably my biggest, I would say, symptom of my ADHD autism would be my rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So my RSD is a real motherfucker. RSD has an actual specific voice in it, which some people are going to think about this and be like, girl, you are not ADHD or autistic, you're fucking schizo. And that is not true. My ADHD presents with aphantasia, which means that I have mind blindness. I cannot create photos in my mind. So my whole life, I have had these different voices in my head used to differentiate between different parts of myself. So like my ego self, scared self, child self. And I will have these conversations normally in the shower when I'm fighting with people, like somebody cuts you off driving and for 2 weeks you just have to fight with them in your fucking shower. In case you ever see them again. And then that way you have the perfect fucking line to say to them. But so probably my RSD, I would say, would be my biggest symptom. And it comes out as a specific voice. And I actually, I call that voice my bullshit voice. I will literally argue with my own self in my head and sometimes out loud to the point where people are like, you're literally arguing with yourself. I'm like, pardon you, people are working here, okay? We're having a staff meeting. Calm down. Like, I work by myself. We're having a meeting. We're working things out. It's called communication. Look it up.
And so with you and the bullshit voice, who's the line manager here?
Yeah, so it used to be the bullshit voice. My RSD is solely focused on a few topics. One of them being productivity, one of them being mothering. So I'm a single parent and have been since my son was under a year old. And then the third one is basically like, of course, I would say that this would be a status quo for most women within society. That would be, the way I look and the way I present, right? And it used to be my RSD. My RSD used to be in control. I actually had no idea up until 2 years ago that the voice of my RSD was not my true voice. So for almost my entire adult life, like I'm 34 years old now. So until I was about 32, I had no idea that the level of anxiety that was just like buzzing in my body, I call it body noise actually, which is the term that I use for my clients, is it's like this low key buzzing or like almost like a tone or a sensation underneath the skin in the body all the time. I didn't know that everybody did because I didn't even have words to describe it. So I have recognized now that is a level of overstimulation when I'm overstimulated, which happens all the time because I'm ADHD autistic. And so I'm basically like a fucking squirrel who's been doing drugs for years. And I just have no regulation tactic because I didn't have an understanding that wasn't my entire personality. Like that wasn't who I was at a soul core. I thought that anxiety, that voice that was in my head that was just constantly like, oh, you only packed your kid vegetables and fruit and snacks today and you didn't put a protein in. Guess what? Child services is coming for your ass, bitch.
Yeah.
So like this RSD like had this, it almost had me in like this chokehold. Like I would second guess almost every single thing that I would say or do to the point where it was like debilitating. Like I can remember being pregnant and my partner at the time had asked me like, we're out of hot sauce. Can you pick up some hot sauce? Right. And so here I am, I'm like, got this belly on me and I'm staring at these hot sauces and I go into this full body fucking panic attack and I cannot control myself. Right. So I just start crying in the grocery store. I'm just staring at these hot sauces and I'm just crying. And in my head, I'm just like, just pick a fucking hot sauce, you dumb bitch.
Mm.
Why can't you make a fucking
Mm.
simple decision? And I'm literally going through this meltdown. And this sweet old lady comes up to me and she's like, honey, are you okay? Thinking that like something is wrong. And, right?
Mm.
And I look at
Yeah.
her and I'm like, full on meltdown. And this poor
Mm.
old lady is looking at me and she's like, these are just pregnancy hormones. It's going to be okay. Da, 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 da,
Oh
da.
gosh.
And I've realized now, like, pregnancy hormones. That was
Mm.
RSD. That was like, girl, if you bring
Mm.
home the right type of hot sauce, you may as well consider yourself like pregnant and single because your man is going to leave you. Like he's gone. Like you brought home
Yeah.
Frank's and he wanted sriracha and you are dumb.
Mm.
That is like, it sounds like such a silly little story to explain the way that RSD has had like a choke on my life, but that was my entire life, constantly.
I get that, and I think I've described it to friends in the past about RSD, and there seems to be kind of two branches of it, of this kind of people pleasing, like, oh, I'll do anything to make you happy, and then as potentially where you are now, where you just do whatever the fuck you want, and even go like a step beyond it of saying, actually, I'm going to reject you and I'm going to do what I want to do regardless of what you think, because you're going to reject me ahead of time.
Yeah. And so like I really went through this defensive phase.
Mm.
So where like I was like rejection queen. Like I was
Mm.
like I was rejecting stuff left, right, center, right? Like I was like, no, I don't like you. Reject, reject, reject. Like it's like, you know, like somebody's calling me on the phone and I'm just fucking hitting decline 247.
Mm.
And that didn't serve my purposes either. So I really had to learn to work with my RFD and to see like and to almost be more gentle with it. Almost be like almost like talking to my kid, right? Like and this is where it really has hit me so hard that my whole life I have been literally kicking the shit out of myself in my own brain, trying to be better, trying to be more, trying to add more productivity, trying to, you know, make sure like that age old adage, right? Like I wanted to be the rich working mom who also had the ability to make fucking cookies from scratch every single day and make her own baby food and handle everything and look good while I'm doing it. And in reality, I can't even match my own fucking socks. Like I don't wear matching socks. Like I'm like, listen, if they're the same texture and the same length and they're either both higher than the ankle or both lower than the ankle, we are fucking fine.
And I think it's funny that you kind of go like, if I can't do the socks, if I can't match the socks, I can't do any of the rest of it as well. It's that thing that kind of totalitarian thing, which is a neurodivergent trait of saying it's either everything or it's absolutely nothing.
That's correct. And, you know, like when I look at my patterning, even from childhood, I mean, like I would burn out and I was accoladed for the amount. I was accoladed for the amount that I could fucking hustle. Because when I was younger, I would literally like, you know, like even in high school and stuff, like I was a straight A student and I was, you know, on a top tier for a gymnastics team and I coached. And this was all at like 15, 16, 17, right? And I would be at school full of straight A's, go straight from school over to the gym. I train at the gym 4 or 5 nights a week. And then like I'd be doing like tutoring for other people and like lesson planning for my own students. And like literally like I was acting as an adult in my formative years. When I got into university, it was the same. I would go to school. I'd take 5 classes in university, which in Canada is like a full load. And I worked 2 jobs and coached gymnastics on top of that. And people were like, how are you doing all these things? And my mind was like, Reanne, you are a lazy piece of shit. You are a lazy fucking asshole. You should only need to sleep a couple nights a week. Like you have no reason feeling tired. There are people out there who have way more grit and way more hustle. And what would happen is I would perpetuate these cycles of like go, 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 go. And then I'd sleep for like an entire weekend or, you know, like 4 or 5 days and I'd get up and I'd just repeat it. And I thought that was fucking normal because that was accoladed for. People were like, hell yeah, like you're a go-getter. you want something done, you ask Reanne to do it because she's so fucking busy. She doesn't have time to not do it.
Almost like a capitalist pinup.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just like, I would say yes to everything. I would say yes to everything. And I'd be like, yeah, man, for sure I can do that. I haven't showered in 3 days, but fuck it. Who needs to shower?
Yeah. And I think there's that thing of, with ADHD, that there's a lack of self-awareness. I'm very guilty of this. Like, I don't suppose you were looking outside of yourself of going, well, these metaphorical people have got a lot more grit than me. They're doing a lot more. But your actual friends, of seeing how busy they were and what they were doing.
Yeah. And so, like, for me, everything seemed like it was that much harder. Like, I could never understand why it looked so easy for everyone. And it was like even just a small stuff. Like, for example, like a huge joke that like it used to hurt my feelings so much. And I think about it now and I so get it. And I have so much compassion for my younger self. But like, my car was always like a fucking disaster. When I say like a fucking disaster, I mean like there were fries from like last year on the fucking floor. Like, you're sitting on a box of tampons. I had tires in my back seat for 2 years at one point. Yeah. And like, I remember, like, like my ex-partner, who I had my son with, he's like, "Do you not remember to bring coffee cups out of your vehicle?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Yeah, you just pick it up as you're fucking getting out of the vehicle." And I'm like, "Okay, hello, but I have 57 other things in my hands, including our infant child, and you want me to remember a fucking coffee cup? Are you joking?" But then he's like, "It's not about the coffee cup, Reanne. Like, this is your whole fucking life. Like, you." He said to me one time, and he was so fucking right, and I was so mad. He said, "You couldn't organize a rock fit in a gravel pit." He was right. I could organize the shit out of anybody else's life, and I could muster the energy and whatever to do it for other people, but I couldn't even keep my own house clean. I couldn't keep my own car clean. I went 2 years one time without buying deodorant because every time I went to the store, I couldn't remember to buy deodorant. So I just smelled like fucking BO for like 2 years.
And this is when you were not showering every day as well.
Yeah, like, see. What the hell, Reanne? I literally I'd go to the store to buy deodorant. I'd get home, I'd be like, "What is that smell? Oh my God, it's me. Where's that deodorant? Oh my God, I didn't use it." Like,
no,
it was so
hard.
that people were looking from me from an outside perspective and being like, "This girl has her life together. Like, she is running businesses. She's a single parent. Like, she barely sleeps. She barely eats. She's doing volunteering. She's, dealing with an ex who has his own issues, and she's staying the whole as calm as she can the whole time." Well, no, I wasn't staying calm. I was disassociated. I was completely disassociated. I had no idea what was going on in my life whatsoever. Like, it was like, at this level of fog that was so thick that, like, I could barely, at one point, my parents had lived in the same house since I was 5 years old. They had the same phone number since I was 5 years old. I forgot my parents' phone number because I was so disassociated. Like, I couldn't remember what my parents' house phone was since I was 5 years old. And
so how did you...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so how did you go from living this kind of... It's the wrong word. It's the only word that comes to mind. This crazy, overarching, overwhelming life to going, "Oh, I might have ADHD," and a year later going, "Oh, I might have autism." How did you kind of do that?
So some things it actually started on social media, which is really funny, because that was, something that I really struggled with in putting in my businesses, right? So I have a lash company, so I do eyelash extensions and educate them. And at the time, I was very heavy into educating within like a world renowned perspective. Like, I was invited to conferences in Europe, in Australia, in Vegas. Like, I was a keynote speaker that was showing up a lot of places and stuff like that. And for some reason, my business was still like, I could tell people what I was doing, and they would turn their businesses from, like $1,000 or $2,000 a month to ten to $20,000 a month. And mine was not doing that. So I
Mm.
was fixing other people's businesses without being able to fix my own. And when COVID happened, it actually shut my business down. And what that did was it gave me the space to decompress. It forced me, it literally kicked me off the hamster wheel that I was on. And I had to look at the areas of my life where I was maybe masking, like I was masking
Mm.
wholly, right? And my business was one of them. I had the hardest time posting on social media. Like I had all of these RSD thoughts that were like, for example, oh, well, it's stupid, Reanne. You've
Mm.
been running this business for 4 years and you've built all of your students and all of your mentorships businesses. And like, so you shouldn't have to advertise for clients. In fact, people are going to make fun of you. And it's actually fucking embarrassing that you don't have a full clientele list.
Mm.
Well, no, it's not embarrassing. That's life in that type of industry. Things ebb and flow. You lose clients, you
Yeah.
gain clients. Like that's how it goes. I took everything so personally. Like if a client didn't want to come back to me, like I was like, oh my god, it's clearly because I'm the biggest piece of steaming pile of shit they've
Mm.
ever met in their entire life.
Only explanation. Only
So
explanation.
that's the
Nothing
only
else.
reason. Yeah. It has had nothing to do with their finances or
No.
their own personal shit that was going on or, the fact that they just got pregnant and they're feeling unwell. No, the only answer is that I am a steaming pile of shit. Yeah. And so basically what happened was I started getting into neurobehavioralism. I've been a healer
Mm-hmm.
for almost my whole life. Right? I've been gifted my whole life with spiritual abilities. And luckily my family let that weird little part of me just
Mm.
stay alive. Um, and they just really facilitated that. Like they were just, my parents will tell people all the time. It's so funny because they're so proud of me no matter what I do. Like they're like, oh my God, yeah, Reanne's going to law school. And then it was, oh yeah, Reanne is a lash artist. And then it was like, and now it's like, oh yeah, we don't actually know what Reanne does, but she does things and she makes money and she's pretty fucking funny. So and they're like so proud of it. Like my dad tells people, and my dad's like a very astute businessman. And he's like, yeah, my daughter's, he calls it the mojo. He's like, my daughter's got the mojo. So when I was, yeah, I know. I'm like, okay, Austin Powers, can you stop making it seem like a heart shape that vibrates and shit? But like, thank you so much, Dad. So when COVID hit, what really ended up happening was it forced me off that hamster wheel, right? And so I was forced to look at myself and also forced to look at my child who was presenting signs of ADHD and autism. And of course, this is my first child. We're both ADHD and autistic.
Mm.
So I had no idea that the stuff that my kid was doing wasn't normal.
Mm.
Like, I'm like, what do you mean your 3-year-old doesn't like actually sits down and colors for longer than 6 seconds? We were going through like 20 activities in like 40 minutes, right? Like people
Yeah.
are like, oh, what do you do with your kid? I'm like, I run him like a fucking husky dog. Like I take him outside and we do like 5-kilometer runs and they're like, your kid is 3. And I'm like, it's the only way he sleeps. And so I started
Yep.
looking at this perspective in social media as the rise of ND started coming more online, right? All of these informational tools that were coming, onto Facebook, onto the Instagram, onto TikTok, all of that sort of stuff. As I started looking at it, I'm like, oh, ADHD in women. I'm like, that's interesting that it would present differently.
Mm.
And I started reading up on some stuff and like, oh my God, this is me. This is me.
Mm.
Like, this is me to a T. Like, I have never read something so much that is the dumpster fire that I fucking am. Like there is my dumpster. There's the fire, and there I am, this little fucking raccoon just peeking out. Hey guys, like I get it. And so it was really started when I was looking at resources for my son to be able to help me become a better parent. That I realized that. And then in kindergarten, my son was presenting some social abnormalities, some issues with regulation, etc. And a lot of the kids in his class were, because during their formative years, 2 to 3 years old to about 5 years old, they were kept at home. There were no activities. We weren't allowed to go to parks. This was during COVID. That sort of stuff. So kids like mine who were only children who were stuck at home lacked that level of relating to other people. And so when I went to take my son for some play therapy, thinking like, okay, like this will help him relate to other people, um, the therapist gave me some forms and some information reading, and some of it was on autism. And as I started to read it from a child perspective, I was like, holy shit, I'm the most autistic person there has ever been. Like, I didn't even have to study for that exam. I just fucking walked in and they were like, yeah, you passed. You got 100% on the autistic test. Didn't even study. I'm so like,
Yeah.
I started looking at it from this perspective of like, holy shit, no wonder things have been so hard for me because I have been living my life. Like I am the square peg and I am trying to force myself into this round fucking hole.
Yeah.
And it's like this light turned on.
I think there's this question that I hear from neurotypicals quite a lot, which is why bother to get a diagnosis? What's the benefit of knowing this about yourself?
Yeah, I love this question. So I have seen this in a lot of different perspectives, and I've heard a lot of different narratives on it. I can obviously only speak from my own perspective. I do have insight from my clients. Most of my client list is actually deep because you're probably not like, and it's so funny because my clients will say to me like, I had no idea that I was ADHD or autistic. And I'm like, listen, if you're coming to me for healing or coaching, you are ADHD or autistic or neurodiverse because that's the only fucking language I speak. Like if you're neurotypical, you think I'm that shit fucking crazy. If you are neurodiverse, you're like, oh my God, this woman has put language to the things that I have never been able to express.
Yeah.
So I think the reason for me for getting a diagnosis is a twofold part. First of all, it gives me access to information and a way of explaining who I am so that I can advocate for myself and advocate for other people. The second is that in Canada, me having a diagnosis allows me to access different support systems for both myself and my son so that we can regulate our nervous systems. And that is the hugest component, is that we're not taught how to regulate the nervous system, whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical. We are not taught that our nervous system is such a sensitive little bitch that it needs to literally be handled with tiny little gloves, right? We need to love this little nervous system like we're loving a newborn baby, but we're just taught to power through things. So like, fuck it if you burn out, fuck it if you don't eat and you don't sleep and you know, you're on anxiety meds and you're this and you're that. And then you go to therapy and they just tell you have anxiety and you're like, great, I know, I feel it in my body. What do I do about it? And they're just like, ha, 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 you have anxiety. You're like, thank you, but what do I do about it? And they're just like, ah, here's your anxiety. Thank you so much. I see this. I feel it. I know it. I've lived with it every day in my fucking life, but I don't know what to do about it. So having that diagnosis has given me the power and it has empowered me to say, so listen, I'm not actually going to make eye contact with you the entire time that we have a conversation. And the reason for that is because I'm ADHD and autistic. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. If I'm looking at your eyes, I'm getting lost in them like they're the stars. And I'm not focusing on what you're thinking. Right? I'm not focusing on what you're actually saying. I need to dull a sense out so that I can actually focus on what you're saying. So like even things like a lot of my clients, when they come in, we like sit on my living room floor and I have like sensory chairs. Like there's one in my son's room and I have some downstairs and I have fidgets and I have coloring stuff and I have music and I have weighted blankets and I have all these things. And when people come in, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Let's get fucking weird. Do you want to scream or something? And they're like, I'm able to say like, listen, I'm diagnosed ADHD and autistic, and here's how it works for me. I
Mm.
need to move to be able to correlate my thoughts. I need to be able to stand so that I can think about what I'm doing before I go into a conversation, before I go into an interview. Like, let's say, for example, today I was able to say to myself, okay, we need to get ready. We need to fill our water bottle. We need to have some coffee, and we need to eat. And we need to, and just for full transparency for everyone, I am medicated, and I did make the choice to get medicated because my ADHD was out of control within
Mhm.
my RSD and then within my executive functioning. Like literally, I could not organize a rough right?
Mhm.
Like my son's dad said. And
Mm.
well, I had no idea that like if my sugar levels drop, I'm a basket case.
Mm.
I had no idea that if I don't drink enough water, that triggers my RSD. I
Yeah.
had no idea that if I take more than like let's say like 3 large tasks on a day, that my nervous system is burnt out, and I'm going to need a 4 hour nap in the afternoon, and I'm going to feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
So what it has done is it has given me the tool to say, so listen, I'm ADHD and autistic. I have a diagnosis, and this is how I'm using it. I'm using it to be able to say and come up with scripts and to help people to say like, okay, I would love to have that conversation, but before, I have this conversation with, whomever in whichever capacity, first I need to eat, I need to have some water, and I need to have a cup of coffee. If I can't do those 3 things, this conversation isn't going to flow in the way that I want to, which is going to trigger my RSD, and I'm just going to think I'm a big fucking steaming.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's that thing of people who don't get it, don't understand that you're literally telling the truth there. That is exactly how you will feel. Like it's not, you're not talking in hyperbole. You're like, it's not metaphor. It's literally how you're going to feel.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things that like
Mm.
when it's stand-up comedy, like that is where people are really like they laugh, right? Like they think it's fucking
Mm.
hilarious. And it
Mm.
is fucking hilarious. It is fucking hilarious because like I cannot count the amount of times that like I have, like been running late and like lost track of time, and I've like ran out of the house and like I haven't brushed my teeth and I'm wearing 2 separate socks and I'm not wearing underpants and like my bra is showing through my shirt, and I'm like, going to like a formal event and I'm just like show up like this fucking bomb has gone off and I'm just like, hey guys, I would feel bad about myself before that and like all these things that I would do. So, like, for example, this morning we had like my time, this podcast is at like 10
Mhm.
a.m., right? So I'm like, okay, well, I need to get up for sure by 8 because I already, and like, this is literally like how my brain is talking to me, how I'm organizing it, right? I need to get up at 8 a.m. I showered last night. I washed my hair yesterday, so I don't have to do those things, but I'm going to need to get up. I need to have my thyroid medication. Then I need to have my ADHD pill. I need to eat. I need to have a cup of coffee. I need to get myself ready. While I'm getting myself ready, I need to do some regulation aspects so that I feel really good and stable within my body. And that's going to take me about an hour and 45 minutes because in between that, I'm going to stop 56 times to kiss my cat. My mom is probably going to call. I'm going to forget what I'm doing. I'm immediately going to have to pee as soon as anything starts. Like, this is the literal conversation that ND people are having inside their
Mm.
brains to make sure that we're masking as neurotypical, to make sure
Yeah.
that when we actually get to the point of doing something that we look like we have it fucking together. And the part that killed me so much before knowing this, before having my diagnosis or even self diagnosis, because I believe that self
Mm.
diagnosis is very valid. When someone
Mm.
comes to me and they say, I think I might be ADHD, I say, I think you might be fucking right. Because if
Mm.
that's something that you are seriously considering and you have sat there and you are neurodiverse, I know that you have gone down 100 different fucking rabbit holes of social media, of diagnosis, of whatever it is. Like, you've dove down that because you have spent your entire life trying to find the words to explain yourself. You
Yeah.
have spent your whole being feeling like a fucking outsider that's trying to fit in, but also you kind of want to be the outsider because you like to feel you know that you're different, but you want to be different, but you want to be different in a way that's accepted. And to say that out loud, people are like, that makes no fucking sense unless you're neurodiverse.
Yeah, I think there's that thing of, if you could choose not to be ADHD, I don't think anyone would ever willingly go, yeah, I'll sign up for that. I can have some really bad speed. Like, it's going to have like zero buzz. Like, you're not, there's that thing of like, it's really overdiagnosed. It's like, it's really not. And I think there's that thing of like, if you're coming
Yeah.
in and saying, I think I've got that, I want to ostracize myself and feel the stigma of that for the rest of my life.
Well, yeah, and especially
Yeah.
when it comes to autism, right? Because here's the thing is like when it comes to ADHD and autism, people are looking at like the high end of the spectrum, and neurodiversity, of course, like I just want to say this for anybody who's watching, and I know that you know this, but neurodiversity is not just ADHD and autism.
Yeah.
It's also,
Yeah.
you know, epilepsy, OCD, sensory issues, all of these things that are not being seen. And people are like, oh, well, you know, this wasn't along 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And I'm like, really? Your grandfather who ate bologna sandwiches every fucking day for lunch and literally had to have his pants starched and fucking ironed, otherwise he couldn't wear them? Yes, that was perfectly normal. No, that's not fucking normal, okay? Like, sorry, not normal's the wrong word. That's not neurotypical. That's not neurotypical, right? And so, so much of our energy as ND and NT is being spent spinning in the background without and it's not a direct thought. It's not like, how do I make myself mask, right? We're not like, all right, going out into the world. Do I look neurotypical now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I think that's what we're doing before diagnosis, right?
Exactly. That's what we're doing. And we're taking all of this energy, so much energy that's running in the background. It's like if you have an iPhone or, you know, I only use iPhone, so I'll just use the iPhone. If you have an iPhone and you leave every fucking app open and you have 477, you know, safaris open in the background and your phone is charging and you're wondering why it's charged all night and it's still only at 60%. That is the ND nervous system. We don't close any of our tabs. And so they're running in the background constantly, which means that we are constantly juggling between trying to mask and trying to moderate ourselves. And so having this diagnosis and this platform to say like, yeah, I am ADHD and guess what? I function. I am autistic and guess what? I function. Like, and I function well now that I know what it is, because I have the ability to advocate for myself. I have the understanding to advocate for myself. I can say, listen, I have these people pleasing tendencies and setting boundaries is really hard for me. So I'm going to come up with a system for me to set boundaries because it is not natural and normal for me to do that. It has swerved in such a way that it gives me and gives all of us, I think, like an empowerment. I would not choose for anyone to be ADHD or autistic in a world like this, but I would also not give it up for myself because I also recognize the ways that it has powered me in really incredible ways. Like, our brains are so different. We see patterning and structuring, and we see holes in things in a way that is so fucking brilliant. When I look at other ADHD and autistic and ND people, all I think about is, my God, you're so fucking brilliant. Like, you're so fucking brilliant that you're weird, and it makes sense to me. I want you to be weird because that's where your fucking brilliance is. Like, when we look at all of these inventors, like we take like Einstein, for example, like there's no way that motherfucker wasn't autistic. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Look at him. Just look at him. He's fucking autistic. Like, no one sits around and plays with fucking molecules and light bulbs and electricity and shit like that unless you're fucking autistic. Right? Like,
there's one thing that I do want to say as well, because you were saying about all the different types of neurodiversity and neurodivergence as well, and I think there's something that's missed quite a lot, which is sub-diagnostic level of neurodivergence as well. where we've got this line that's just an arbitrary line that's drawn in diagnosis, and we agree that if you're above the line, you've got ADHD, you've got autism, you've got OCD, but it is that line in the sand. And so if you have some of these traits, and if you have them to a significant effect and they are impacting your life, it's really useful as well to have that knowledge as well.
Yeah, and it gives you the knowledge and the power to say like, okay, like one of the things that I really work on with clients is like triggering, right? Like what triggers me into an episode. Right? So and it's a slow process to understand this, right? It's a slower process. It's not something that they come in and in an hour we're like, you sorted. No, that's not how it works. It's very much like we take it like one fucking trigger at a time, one thing at a time, right? And so it's like, okay, like, you know, let's say for my clients who are ND and they work like a typical job, right? Like they work like a Monday to Friday, like a 9 to 5 or whatever it is, right? They often experience a level of burnout. And so their weekends are like, they're like, I want to do things on the weekend, but I'm so exhausted from peopling all fucking week that I'm like, I'm on my couch. Like I just literally have been on my couch. I've been eating Chinese takeout for 3 days. Like, and then they shame themselves for it. And so this allows us to look at it and say, okay, like, so your nervous system gets stressed out from the amount of stimulation at work. So let's look at some tools that you can use before work that are not going to, right? Because when we look at someone's nervous system that is already overwhelmed, and I see this a lot with like ND people who are working with like NT coaches and stuff like that, where they're like, you just gotta power through it. You just gotta do it. You just get up and you just say, I'm gonna do this, and then it happens. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. First, you get up, you have existential dread, you cry for a while, you might have a snack, maybe you cry again, you scroll social media, some doom scrolling comes in, you know, you try to disassociate, you try to get back into your body. And then they're like, well, just write out your gratitudes every morning for an hour. Well, no, I can't, what? Like, I don't have an extra hour in my day because I'm so fucking tired. I'm so fucking tired to the bone that I can't even think of, you know what I'm grateful for? I'm grateful for the sound of this bitch shutting the fuck up. That's what I'm grateful for at this point. Like, we can come up with very tangible ways to say like, hey, your nervous system, we need to regulate before you go to work. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to try these different regulation exercises in your body. And we're going to do them for 1 minute in the morning, 1 minute on your lunch break, and 1 minute after work. And people are thinking, well, what's that fucking 1 minute going to do? It's not going to do fucking much. That's like like you're being dehydrated and you take an eyedropper of fucking hydration. Okay, and I hear that. But here's the thing is that someone who is ND, adding anything into the schedule, anything that is different is going to become a hyper focus. So you're going to literally think about doing that thing and spend 70% of your energy thinking about doing that thing and when you're going to do it and did you do it right and has it been done correctly and do you feel anything and who's watching you and, you know, like you're going to gear yourself up all day for this 2-minute event kind of thing, right? We need to take it so slow that it's not triggering the nervous system. And that's where it becomes so difficult for ND people is that we go like, okay, so like weight loss is a huge one that I've seen with people. And I want to say just like, again, for anybody who's watching this does not reflect my personal views upon like people's weights and different things. Like I actually do not give a shit what you look like or your weight or anything like that. But typically people will go, I need to get healthy. I want to lose weight. So I'm going to start 5 days. They're going to go from 0 to 5 days a week at the gym, plus meal prepping, plus drinking 4 gallons of water a day, plus taking vitamins. And they're like, yeah, let's get healthy in this last 3 weeks. And they're so fucking burnt out they can't even look at a piece of spinach for the next 6 years. For neurodiverse people, that puts us into our trauma responses, right? That puts us into our nervous system responses. We're at that point where then we're gonna freeze, we're gonna flee, we're gonna fawn, or we're gonna fight. So we're gonna start fighting with ourselves in our heads. We're gonna start fawning,
Yeah.
like people pleasing or anything like that, trying to mask. We're going to go avoidant, or we're going to freeze, and we're just going to turn ourselves into little burritos in dark lights and hide under our beds for a week. And then shame ourselves on top of it. And that doesn't work for that. That cycle is so toxic for us that it literally debilitates our nervous system. It debilitates our ability to actually do the things that we are already doing well. And so we have to take it so much slower than that, right? So like even like the tiniest things. So like I drink out of tumblers all the time. People ask me all the time. They're like, Reanne, why do you always carry around a fucking cup like this? And I'm like, yeah, let me tell you exactly why. For one, because I get dehydrated. And what's going to happen when I get dehydrated is that I am going to go into a full-on autistic burnout spin on the fucking floor. And they're like, ha, that's so funny. I'm like, yeah, but it's not a joke. I'm dead fucking serious. No. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean I'm not doing it in the bathroom. Right? Like my body's going to get so dramatic that I can't even fucking handle it. It's just going to take over and shut down. 2, sucking out of a straw is the number, like it's like the first sense of soothing that we become as babies, right? We suckle, we suck, and that affects our nervous system. The act of sucking and swallowing actually pulls the diaphragm, the vagus nerve, so that it calms our nervous system down. So 1, I'm not chugging water and overwhelming myself. 2, it is a self-regulation tactic that is very discreet. And 3, people who are neurodiverse need more water in their systems because we're constantly functioning in the background. So if you drive a vehicle more, you have to get an oil change more often. You have to get your brakes checked more often. You use more gas.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well because I struggle. I think everyone struggles with water, and I've kind of gone the opposite way of going. Like I drink sparkling water, and I drink sparkling water out of a can, and it has to be flavored as well because then it's interesting, and for me as well, it's infinitely recyclable because it's not in plastic. And I go, okay, cool. It ticks lots of these boxes, which make me interested in drinking water. And then
stimulation, right? Stimulation. So a lot of people will stim through food. And so like my son is a big stimmer through food. And I get a lot of people say different things to me. So have you ever heard of like Takis? Do they have those where you guys are?
I'm not
They're
sure.
Like spicy chips. They're like little spicy
like
chips.
Tortillas?
They're like, yeah. And they're like round and they're like fucking spicy. So my son, every morning on the way to school, and we walk to school most mornings, he eats either the spicy chips or salt and vinegar chips or something that has like a bitterness or a tartness or like a whatever. And it's actually stimming for his sensations. It regulates him at school to do that. He regulates by eating spicy foods, right? Like you're regulating by having the bubbles in your mouth.
Yeah.
And so people will like look at ND people and like, you know, people will look at me and be like, you let your kid eat chips on the way to school? And I'm like, whoa, Sharon, first of all, calm your titties. Second of all, yes, I do, because he is actually regulating himself. And I'm not going to take something away that helps him regulate. And third of all, it's none of your fucking business. So just shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and the thing is that as a culture, as a group, as a collective, ND people aren't privy to this information. When I tell people like, oh yeah, whenever I'm talking with people, like I'm low key moving my leg, or like you can see like I talk with my hands a lot, or like I'll like move like this, like I'm constantly moving, right? And people are like, oh, you're just a happy person. And I'm like, no, I'm stimming right now. I am moving the energy out so that I can focus on what you're saying. I have to have my body moving so that I can focus. And when I say that to people, they're like, oh my God, I'm the same. Like, I had no idea. Like, I have all of these things that I do. Like, I love spicy foods and I calm down when I have spicy foods. Or I like it when people hug me really tight.
Mm.
or I have to have headphones in when I go into stores and stuff, so that otherwise I get the anxieties, or like different things like that. Or I have to make sure that I can't let myself get too hungry, because
Mm.
then it becomes like full meltdown scenario. Yeah, that's your nervous system that is telling you like you need to be regulated, and you have found all of these tiny ways that mask you into a neurotypical culture that are not that weird, that people are, they're acceptable. Like, to the point where people are like, oh yeah, that's just Reanne. Like, she just walks
Mm.
around and hums and she's just a happy lady. And no, I'm like, I'm vocal singing
Yeah.
to calm myself down. And to be able to have the words to say that, to be able to like have someone that says like, okay, like, yeah, you're totally overwhelmed. Like, my clients will text me
Mm.
and they'll be like, I am fucking losing it. And I'm
Mm.
like, cool. That sounds like a lot of fun, right? Like, and that's my
Mm.
sarcasm, right? I'm like, okay, so let's
Yeah.
let's dial this back. Let's dial this back. Let's look at it from a perspective
Mm-hmm.
of like, did you eat today? And they're like,
Mm.
so like the one thing that I say to my clients all the time, I'm like, did you eat and have you had anything to drink, and no coffee doesn't count?
Mm. Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it's 2 p.m. and I have had one taquito, 7 cups of
Mm.
coffee, and a gummy bear that I stole out of my kid's fucking little bag thing, right? And I'm like, cool. So you're actually not in an ADHD or autistic spin. You need to
No.
eat so your nervous system can regulate. This is your nervous system telling you you're gassed out. You
Yeah.
don't have any gas to go nowhere. Like if you were a car, you'd be putting along.
Mm.
And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I never even would have thought about that. And I'm like, right. And so what we do from there is we come up with our own set of like boundaries and rules for each person, and they're all going to be a little bit different. But right, like, I have actual sheets for my clients that say like, when I start to feel,
Mm.
anxiety in this part of my body, or when I start to have like this thought, these are the coping mechanisms that work really well for me. And they're literally like on their phone and pasted so that they can see it. Like, whenever I start a new habit with my clients, like I said, like even with the water drinking, it's not going to be you're going to go
Mm-hmm.
for 8 glasses of water a day. It's going to be like you're going to go for you're going to drink like one of these mugs a day of water.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I will literally have them take like post-its and put it on the places where they have, like, where they go the most. So like if it's at their work, or like on their bathroom mirror, or like alarms in their phone that say like, hey, like, you need to take a sip of water now, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of people who are neurodiverse, they're like, I feel like I shouldn't have to remind myself to do these things, and I feel shame around the fact that I have to remind myself. So I don't remind myself because I'm embarrassed about the fact that, like,
Mm.
what if this alarm comes off and I'm sitting here with people and it just says take a drink of water, and somebody's just like, you have to remind yourself to take a drink of water? Well, yeah, Derek, what's it to you?
I I think the world would be so much easier for neurodivergence if there was a fragment less of the judgment that we get from society at large of going, this is a set way and we do not approve of that.
Yes, and that's exactly it. And that has been
Mm.
like my whole thing is like, you know, I tell my clients my biggest thing, and like even with stand-up
Mm-hmm.
comedy, and even when it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I flat out tell everyone I am ADHD autistic and I do weird fucking shit. And when you
Mm-hmm.
come to my house, the expectation is you come exactly as you choose. I do not give a flying fuck if you show up here naked. My neighbors might, but whatever. I don't care. And lay on my floor and scream. If that's what you
Mm-hmm.
need to do to regulate, I'm so for it. I would lay on the fucking floor and scream with you, because we have to have this level of learning not to give a fuck what these neurotypical people care about. We
Yeah.
have to have this level of saying like, yeah, you're right. Maybe that's how you do it, but I have to do it a different way. And it doesn't make me any less effective. In fact, it makes me
Mm.
more effective. Like, when I am deeply in my power, when I am deeply
Mm.
regulated in my nervous system, and I have checked all of my boxes of like self care, and like, I've done the things that I need to do to keep me well, the level of support that I can give to not just my clients, but to the collective as a general is so fucking massive that the ripple effect is like a fucking sonic bomb, right? Like it just goes off and it's just like, because here's the thing is like, I've gotten to a point with my RSD where I can talk it down before I go on for something, right? Like I could come on and blow this podcast and that would upset me, and I would have the tools to still regulate myself and say like, yeah, okay, like even if Chris doesn't like me or he doesn't like the podcast that we put out, that's okay, because someone out there is going to find that nugget of gold in what I say.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to back myself down because one person doesn't like it or doesn't relate to it, because I can't tell you the amount of times that I have just said something so fucking nonchalant and not even realizing it. And people have messaged me days later or even just said to my face, like, you have no idea how much that's just helped me.
Yeah.
You have no idea that by you just saying like, oh yeah, I'm autistic as fuck. Like, woo, like, look at me. Like, I know I'm autistic.
Yeah.
Giving me the freedom, just that little piece to say like,
yeah, it's that thing of, we don't see autism, we don't see ADHD, we don't see neurodivergence in the public spotlight. We don't see it in our friends as well, because we don't talk about it as a society. And it's only by talking about it and about sharing and having these discussions that people actually understand and can go, actually, I think there's something that I want to look into as well. And like, even in the past, so I got diagnosed 5 months ago, something like that. I think since January, when I've been talking about it, I know 4 or 5 other people that have come up to me that had no idea that they were potentially neurodivergent and have gone off for diagnoses as well. And it's that thing of like, those are people that I've known for years and I've never questioned it, because I've never questioned it until you kind of go, oh, this might be something that affects me.
Yeah, 100%. And that is like, that's the biggest thing is that, and for people like you and I who, and like I said, like whether it's self-diagnosis or an actual, doctor diagnosis, because I know like for us in a country here, unless we pay for our diagnosis, you're waiting 2 to 3 years to get a dose, right? And so I am medicated for my ADHD. I take vitamins. And I also take antidepressants. I take sertraline because I was previously diagnosed with postpartum depression, which was actually clinical burnout. It was nervous system burnout. I was burnt out, and my sweet little parasite of a son was sucking all of the life out of me physically, right? Because and not meaning to. That's what he does. He's a fucking baby. He has to eat. He has to scream. He has to shit. And the level of like being able to say now, and like even my son, like this is the real why I chose to get medicated, is because my son, he regulates off of me. He regulates off of me. I am his safe space, so he regulates off of me. So when I'm dysregulated, he's dysregulated, and it's just like he's screaming, I'm screaming, we're both crying, we're on the fucking floor, we're apologizing to each other, we're mad, we don't like each other, we're, he wants a hug, I don't want to be fucking touched, I want a hug, he hates me right now, like it's, it's chaos, right? And done for me to get regulated is to be able to explain to my son and to be able to model that he has rights. So like even at his school, he gets the fidgeties, right? Like he's like, he wants to move around and he'll tell everybody, he's like, I'm fucking fast. Like I'm fastest. Like my girlfriend at school, he's 7, by the way. So his girlfriend loves him because he farts the loudest and runs the fastest. And I love that for him.
Yeah.
I love that for him. Right. And people will say to me, they're like, your kid is like fucking beyond. Like my son's brilliant. And he's also a shithead. He's a troublemaker. Because
as we all are, right?
Yes. And he gets bored and he's just like, he has no impulse control, right? Like that doesn't come in for neurotypical people until they're 25. Imagine us. We're like in our 60s and we're like, have you ever just thought about rolling down a hill into a mud pile even though you're wearing a suit? Right? We don't have that impulse control. But what he has is tools now, because I have gone and get diagnosed. And actually, it's very interesting. So his dad is ADHD as well. And his dad is a firefighter and has CPTSD, which those symptoms magnify and also model as the same symptoms as ADHD, autism, as a dysregulated nervous system. Right? And so will literally say to his teacher this year, he'll be like, go walk towards the door, and the teacher will look at him and he'll be like, I need to run because I'm about to cause some problems if I don't.
And that's self-awareness, right? Because there's
Yes.
that thing of like, if it's acceptable to call out and say, this is the behavior I'm going to do.
Yes. And that's exactly like, he will flat out, and my son is like extremely hands-on, and that is something that we work on. And I get that because his emotions get so big. Like, he's the kid, like he's gonna talk like this close to your face, right? Like, and I have to remind him all the time. Like, I'm like, we need to back off. Not everybody wants people in their bubble, right? Not everybody's comfortable with that. Like, you and mommy, we are comfortable with that. Like, he's in my bubble all the time. This kid straight up walks in the bathroom while I'm taking a shit. He's like, it stinks in here. Can you cut my orange? I'm like, I am busy. He's like, yeah, I see that. Smells bad in here. I'm like, yeah, okay, but you can't just walk into, you can't just walk into the bathroom when people are using it, right? Like, we need to have some discretion. But like, he has this entire vocabulary that is so above him that it actually can cause problems with other adults, right? Because he will tell them what he wants. And he's not like, excuse me, ma'am, but I would appreciate it if I could take a little bit of a break because my body feels silly. He's like, I'm about to get hands on, I'm gonna whack this guy. And if I don't go for a run around school right now, I'm gonna hit him right in the face. I'm gonna break his nose and I'm gonna laugh about it. And people are like, raising a tiny Ted Bundy? And I'm like, no, he's his needs. If he's saying it in a way that an adult would, because that's how we speak in our home. Like, I will look at him and I'm like, mommy is a 10 on the overstimulated. And right now, you're trying to talk to me while the garburator is going, the dishwasher is going, your YouTube sounds that I already cannot stand are on 57,000, your tablet's on 86. We're not in the same room. I have auditory sensory, plus I'm partially deaf in one ear. And you're talking to me, and now you're getting upset because I can't hear you and immediately fulfill your needs? No, turn some shit down, speak to me, and let's have a conversation, right? Exactly how he talks to me. Like, he'll literally be like, Mom, I have been saying something to you for 2 minutes, and you have not heard a word I said, and I am so mad right now. My body just wants to scream. And I'm like, fair, you're feeling unheard. I receive that. Let's down some of the noise and say what you need to say to me. He's very point blank, right? And so when he's with other adults, like, they'll be like, would you like a drink? And he like looks at them, he's like, no. And they're like, and I'm like, he answered your question. You asked him a question.
Yeah.
He's telling you no. No, he doesn't want a drink right now. He's not being rude because he didn't say, no, thank you. I appreciate you offering. You asked him a question. He has answered.
Yeah. It's that thing of like, I think it can be quite challenging as adults to have a child advocate for themselves because you're in that position of authority. And how can someone question that authority when they're a child? I think there's
my son has this level of like, he has this level of like, I'm so very fucking important. Like, he literally thinks that he is so important that none of his needs need to wait. And that's a double-edged sword because one, it allows him to advocate for himself. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm like, you fucking cause a ruckus. I got you. Like if you're at school and you feel something is unfair, like, we don't just haul off and hit people, and we need to handle that a little bit better. But if you're not being heard, if your needs are not being met, and you have stated it plainly, the best that you can, as many times as you can, I got you. I will come and talk to the teacher. I
Mm.
will come and have these discussions, right? And like, so on my end, I have been able through this diagnosis, and like we both have, so we both of us have therapists that are specifically ND.
Mm-hmm.
And my son is now starting occupational therapy, which is going to teach him how to regulate and,
Mm-hmm.
and give him more tools because he's at a point where he doesn't want to hear the tools from mommy anymore. Mommy needs to be
Yeah.
mommy, and mommy needs to not all of these other things, right?
Mm.
And it is frustrating. It is frustrating.
Yeah.
It's frustrating for him. It's frustrating for me. That is frustrating for everyone around us. But
Mm.
I'm not looking at a short term. I'm not looking at how he acts in grade two. I'm
Yeah.
looking at by the time he's 25 or 26 years old, he is going to know I don't work well in an office because I need that heavy lifting. So I'm
Mm.
not going to go into a career where I'm in an office when I know that I need to move my body. Or if I am, going to go
Yeah.
for an office job or whatever, I'm going to know that I need to, have a hobby that allows me to move my body that I'm going to participate
Mm.
in, several times a week because that is my regulation.
Yeah.
How I regulate. I am going to have the words and the understanding to explain that to people that when I'm in a relationship, when I get into a relationship with a partner, I'm going to say, hey, I go to the gym 4 days a week. I have to
Mm.
go to the gym 4 days a week. It's not because
Yeah.
I'm vain. It's not because it's more
Mm.
important than you. This is how I am regulating. And if I do not do that, I cannot give you my best.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm not playing this game of like, he's 7 years old and there's
Mm.
some people who don't like the way he acts. I'm looking at the 25-year-old man that he's going to become, and the
Mm.
30-year-old man, and the 22-year-old student, and the person who is traveling, who's going to be able to have the words to advocate for his need. And I don't want to take away that spiciness from him. I don't want to
Yeah.
take away his indignance because he needs that. He needs that. That is going to serve him when he is older because so many of us had that when we were younger. And it was, for a lack of better term, beaten
Mm.
out of us by society
Yeah.
because we weren't supposed to have that as children. We weren't supposed to advocate for ourselves. We weren't supposed to, not do it the way that everybody else does that we should do it. Just we're supposed to conform and do what it is that we're supposed to do. Well, I recognize that the world was not made for my child, but I'm not going to make
Mm.
my child fit this world. I'm going to create a new one that allows him to and people like him and people like me and people like you to thrive and have the tools. And that is like the most empowering thing that I can think of. And so, like when I have these struggles with my kid and I go through these meltdowns and I go through
Mm.
these phases of like, fuck, I'm a shitty parent and I suck and my kid is struggling and I don't know how to help him. And yeah, his spiciness gets at me too. Like, could you feel a little less safe with me, please, and stop lipping me off? Could you just do the one fucking thing I'm asking you to do without a 30-minute dissertation on why you have to wear fucking socks at hockey practice? Like, God. But then I
Mm.
think about it, that's going to serve him and the things that he's going to do in his life and stand for people who are like him. And he already does. He already does, right? Like he's at school and there are kids that are, getting bullied and, sometimes he is a bully and sometimes he is the one getting bullied and that's part of childhood. But also when that's
Mm.
ND, that RSD comes in, right? But
Yeah.
he will literally say like a kid will be like, having a hard time and he can't explain themselves. And he will literally say to like a full grown adult or to another child, like, you need to back off because this person's heart is hurting right
Mm.
now. And they are allowed to cry because that is going to make them feel better and their brain will feel more clear after they cry.
Mm.
And you don't get to tell them not to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Like,
it's that thing of like a fully integrated neurodivergent experience into society is a net gain of that thing.
yeah,
If we bring so much more to the party, if we're allowed to.
if we're allowed to, right. And that's the thing is like, my whole platform, my whole understanding, my whole like my deepest soul truth. And like, like I'm a mystic, right? Like we talked about earlier.
Mm.
And so like everything for me comes back to like, what is my purpose here on this planet? And my purpose here on this planet, and I know it, like it is like I feel it in every cell in my body, in every fucking breath that I take, in every word that I speak, is that like my ultimate truth is that I am neurodiverse. And there are so many people out here like me, and we are potent and we are powerful, and we need to be in our bodies so that we can pick up this intuition, because this is the way that humanity is going. We should not be in survival mode anymore, because there's no reason for us in first world countries to be in fucking for survival mode. We have everything that we're accounted for. So survival mode is meant to be like when we need a shelter and we don't have food and we this and we that, not when Susan, two fucking cubicles down, snickers at something that we did and she thinks she's a hoity-toity higher than mightier than us, and now we're feeling less than and we're in an ADHD spin for 2 weeks because fucking Susan thinks that we're not good enough because we use the wrong word in a meeting. No. Right? Our creative ability as ND comes in when we step out of survival mode. It comes in when we are able to say, this is who I am. And you know what? If I need to scream in my outside voice 20 times a day in my own bedroom, I'm going to allow that for myself, whether society likes it or not. If I need to say, I need a minute from this, or I need to move my body, or I need to stop this conversation, or I need to eat before I have this conversation, or whatever it is, if I need to say, like, listen, I can have a heavy conversation, but then I'm going to need, as long as it takes for me to sit on that and I may come back 6 months later and say, hey, remember that time that we had this conversation about X, Y, and Z? Well, I've literally been thinking about this for 6 months, and I have changed my viewpoint. I've changed the way that I want to work with that. Or I understand it differently, or whatever, that we are able to be allowed to have that. And there are so many ND people that are not diagnosed. There are so many ND people that are not even, they don't even know that they don't know. Does that make sense? Right? Like they're so still masked and held in by the neurotypical society that has not been bred for us. And that is not, and I want to make this so clear, I am not the type of person who is my platform has nothing to do with ND versus NT. It's strictly the differences so that you can advocate for yourself and put it into words so that it's understanding. But I believe that what we're going to see in this next while is such a rise and a surge of ND people, because I genuinely believe that it is, yes, a nervous system and a correlation between the brain and all of those sort of things. I don't believe that it is a superpower, and I don't like it when people say that. But what I do believe is that it is very necessary for the evolution of humanity, because we see things so differently, because we perceive things so differently. We are able to take structures that are already at play and manipulate them and create from that in a way that actually works better, where other people can't see those holes. Neurotypical people, they don't see them.
Yeah. And I think we're at time, Reanne. I want to give you a couple of minutes just to say, is there anything that you want people to take away from the episode?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is just that if you are ND, or you think that you are, get into a community where there's people like yourself, people like me, people like the other people that you have interviewed, who are openly discussing what it's like. And if you're starting on that journey and you're the type of person who is openly discussing, please fucking keep talking about it. Please keep going. Because whether you see it or not, whether your RSD is screaming at you, whether you are, you're second guessing, you're third guessing, you're 56 guessing if I should put this post out, or I should have this conversation, or I should advocate for myself. And you know that anxiety and that RSD and all of that burnout is going to come at you afterwards. Do it anyways. Do it, because there are people that are seeing it that you're not even realizing. Every time you take that step, every time you alchemize yourself into your truest, most honest version of yourself, which includes your ND and everything that comes with that, you're giving the permission for someone else to do the same.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for your time.
How can people get in touch with you as well, if you're open to that?
Yeah, You're welcome to follow me on Instagram at Reanne Copley Unfiltered. Threads, same at Reanne Copley Unfiltered. If you are on Facebook, you can check out the Unfiltered Co., which is my business. If you are a female, this one is only for females, and you're wanting to learn how to regulate your nervous system and how to get in touch with your intuition and actually be able to do the things that you want to do and filter stuff out and be in your body, which I believe is like very paramount for us to be able to carry out what we're meant to do on this earth and in this lifetime. You can come check out the Unfiltered Collective. It's a free group that I have, and I run master classes and webinars and all sorts of things. And it's not just the MD aspect, but also the witchy woo aspect of like picking up your intuition and having that understanding of like your greatest purpose. And the regulation aspect allows us to be able to see that without the filter of the RSD and all of those other things, right? To be able to say like, okay, I can believe in myself. This is an actual truth for me. And, you're welcome to come hang out with me. You can pop me on in the DMs. If I don't answer anybody back, hit me up again. I probably just forgot. Right? Like, I will.
Yep.
If I don't have the space to answer something, I'll be like, oh yeah, I don't have space for that. And then it'll be a week go by and I'll be like 2:00 in the morning. I'll be like, I didn't answer that person back.
Yeah. You've reminded me. I need to answer back to someone else. Thank you so much. And that's it for today's episode of This is ADHD, Full Metal ADHD. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation today with Reanne as much as I enjoyed being in it. Sitting here listening back to the episode, I'm kind of reflecting back that Reanne is so unashamedly herself that it makes me question my own view of my own ADHD. There's something about seeing someone who is more unmasked than myself that's almost a challenge to kind of my self-view, and I think I do get a little bit uncomfortable with that, and I'm going to be sitting with that for a while. I think it's that old friend, internalized ableism, and I think I've still got lots to learn on this journey. If you want to learn more about Reanne's work and stay connected, you can find her on social media. You can find her on Instagram at Reanne Copley Unfiltered, and she's got her Facebook group. If you just search for the Unfiltered Collective, you can find her there. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and Threads at This is ADHD Podcast. This is where you'll find nonsense, polls, opportunities to engage with other listeners, and you can get in touch with me personally at the Coaching Blacksmith. If you have any suggestions for future episodes or guests, do feel free to reach out. It's so nice hearing from the community and from you, the listeners, and it really does make having these conversations even more worthwhile than just having the conversations themselves. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you've learned a lot from this episode, and I'll see you soon.